Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second meeting of the Partnership Study Group. It's February 25th, 2026, and good to see so many faces. We are expecting Riane momentarily, but the plan this evening will be basically for me to turn it over to Lawrence in a bit, and he's going to do sort of an introduction to the four cornerstones, and then pass it off to Riane, and she's going to elaborate however she feels. And then I'm going to do a presentation on the media and how it relates to the fourth cornerstone. And then we'll open it up to open discussion. So that's the plan. And Lawrence, take it away.
Thanks, Roger. I thought we had a really good session last time. It was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight. By the way, Riane has emailed us and is making her way into the Zoom, so we might see her here in a little bit. So I'm gonna share my screen. Back to where we were. So you'll remember last time we sort of did the basics for Riane's theory, which hinges on this, what she calls a whole systems approach to assessing some of the challenges we see in society, and that sort of has materialized in her view as a spectrum between a domination system and a partnership system, and that most societies tend to drift, somewhere in the middle, going one or the other at different times in history. I think I mentioned that my students that are taking the Pathways to Global Social Change with me at the University of Arkansas have been reading one of Riane's books, The Real Wealth of Nations, and we just finished that book, and we took an exam, and the students had an opportunity to write on the text and offer their thoughts. And I thought they did a really good job, and I really enjoyed thinking with them, and I enjoyed seeing them think with Riane. That was really what I wanted to see. And I got it, and I was delighted. And two things stood out to me that I wanted to sort of highlight and use as a point to depart for this discussion. And these are critiques that they were raising. I mean, we kind of nudged them in this direction. Let's think critically about what Riane is saying. And two critiques that came up that I think we can address and maybe think with a little more tonight. One is the idea that Riane is calling for a really massive change in the way that we think about things, and they're confronting that with the idea that we, with their perspective, that we live in a time that is, in their minds, tilted towards domination, if you want to think in Riane's terms on that scale, and that makes the prospect of change very daunting. A couple of times I saw students saying, "What are you going to? This is a great idea, but what are you going to do about all the greed that you see in the world? You're never going to be able to get people not to be greedy or not to be selfish or whatever." And so I think they're naturally confronting the steep challenge of transformation, right? And the second criticism, I guess, or the second reluctance that students had to sort of see things Riane's way, was the idea that these are very, very good ideas. That came up over and over. Very, very good ideas, but how do we make them happen? Like, what are the concrete steps that we take to actually get to the type of partnership society that Riane is calling for, right? And again, Riane is not a utopian thinker. She's not trying to create perfection. She's not trying to create something that is out of touch with what is possible in reality and what has been evident in societies in the distant past. But still, their point is, we live in really tough times, and how do we get to that point? And I want to take that first criticism kind of head on with a little bit of historical perspective, and that thinking about us as inhabitants of the modern era, right? And it's easy to say, things are not perfect, that we still see clear signs of domination culture or a domination ethos, whether that's in patriarchy or authoritarianism, or some of the exploitation that comes with the billionaires or capitalism or whatever it is. Totally fair. But to keep things in perspective, and I'm coming at this from a conversation I had with Riane yesterday, which was really fascinating. Riane makes the point that the modern age has seen a tremendous swing towards partnership in a lot of important ways. If you go back to the origins of the modern era, say in the 18th or 19th centuries, it's goes without saying that you definitely have domination elements in the culture of those eras, but you also have some really important intellectual movements, especially, that when we're talking about, say, Western history, really important intellectual movements coming out of the Enlightenment that really hinge on the liberation of the individual, the recognition of the individual as an autonomous, rational agent. And then you see in the ensuing centuries movements that try to extend that idea more broadly in society. And so Riane looks at things like Jewish emancipation processes in the 18th century, or the labor movement in the 19th century, or the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and the feminist movement as part of a common push for a more partnership perspective. So right there, rather than thinking that we're somehow locked into the worst of all worlds right now, in some measures, we're seeing a lot of good things happen historically, like moving back towards a partnership system. That does not by any means mean that that process is complete or where we would want it to be, but there has been a change vis-a-vis centuries in the past. Okay, so then the second point, well, if we want to do even better and you really want to stress partnership and you want to make the kind of changes that would not only improve society, but might help us meet existential challenges in the environment and with climate and whatnot, then the next question is, well, how do we get there? And that is where that's where we come to the cornerstones. Riane's thinking is not highly prescriptive. She isn't developing a catch-all ideology that would lead to a utopian future, but she is really interested in changing the ways we think about relationships between human beings and between human beings and nature. And so she's saying, well, if we shift our values and think about fundamental assumptions that we make about what is a good society, what is a good economy, and whatnot, then we create agency in ourselves to act and make things better. That's I think the way she's thinking about it. And so we gave you guys a really short reading about the four cornerstones, and we won't have to go into depth on all four of them. In fact, we're going to zoom in on the last one today, and then I think later we're going to talk more about economics. But just really quickly, you saw that the cornerstones are really focused on children and the family, on gender relations, on economics, and on language. And one of the things that you can think about as you're encountering these cornerstones is that you don't have to accept them as they are. Like, you can think with them a little bit. So, for example, if we take that first cornerstone about family and childhood, what Riane is suggesting is that this is that changing our relationship or changing our values, the way that we support families, the way that we support children, is critical as a long-term investment in shifting consciousness towards moving away from violence, moving away from natural and economic exploitation. And if you're going to have long-term payoff, you're going to get that through investment in the way that you care, nurture, and educate a child, right? But in some of the writing that I've done with Riane, I've said, hey, that idea actually extends even beyond children. It extends across generations, right? So we can also think, for example, about the way that you think about care for the elderly as contributing members of society who who would benefit from, you know, an increased level of care and concern and engagement, who can also contribute from that type of support. And then, you know, in another frame, if you're looking at gender relations, Riane's thinking comes out of the second wave feminist movement. So she's, you know, in her writing in the past, she's been very concerned about patriarchy and about the constricted categories of not only of male and female, so you can think about that in biological terms, but also masculine and feminine. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Which things in our life do we associate with femininity? Which do we associate with masculinity? And then following from that, which are more important than the others, which are dominant over the others, right? So she's calling for a rethink on those categories. But then, you know, in more modern times, we might think a little bit about, as gender relations, we might think about categories of difference. What other types of categories of difference, like gender relations, even as gender relations are really constitutive for society, right? They really are embedded in the way that we think about the world or think about humanity. But that could extend to other types of other categories of difference, racial or ethnic or things like that. And so that's some things that you can think about. It could inform our discussion later. And then, of course, in our third cornerstone, I would like to add, beyond economics is also that question of development, about building capacity for us to feed ourselves, care for ourselves, house ourselves, and then what that implicates for the environment. So built into that economics cornerstone is a concern for environment and nature as well. And so these are starting points. Like if you're thinking about building a society over the long term, and you're asking, what can I actually do to bring about the change I want to see, then Riane is suggesting you have to go down to the fundamental assumptions that we make and start from there, and then let other things follow from that. So with that in mind, I'm gonna stop my share so I can see you and talk. Oh, and there's Riane. Hey, there she is. You made it in. So I'm gonna see if Riane wants to add some thoughts, and then we'll turn it over to Roger, and we'll have a little bit more intense conversation about the fourth cornerstone, about narrative and language. Riane, I don't know if you joined us during most of what I was discussing. I wonder if you have anything to add.
Well, I couldn't get in because it was asking for the proverbial password, and then you sent me another link, and I'm grateful for that. But I want to add one thing. Why is we're taught to marginalize gender as just a women's issue, right? And now maybe just a men's issue because, you know, of the redefinition in progress of, quote, masculinity, etc. And the point of that is that neuroscience shows that what we observe and experience as children and this happens largely in families, of course, but, you know, and families don't just whoosh come out of no place. They're embedded, aren't they, in the culture or subculture. But what we experience there really impacts nothing less than how our brains develop. Because as you probably know, we're not born with fully developed brains. And they have to continue to develop So long before our brains, much less our critical faculties, are formed, we are taught in domination-oriented families that this women's work, that it's really inferior, it's less than, right? And that women themselves, or anything labeled feminine, is off bounds for boys and for men, right? So what this really teaches us is to equate difference with either inferiority or superiority. One is better than the other, with either dominating or being dominated in a rigid domination family, with either being served or serving. And so you have this template for equating difference, whether it's a racial, we have a template for in-group versus out-group, thinking and acting, whether it's based on race, whether it's based on religion, whether it's based on ethnicity, the other is devalued. And women are, in that sense, think of the story of Eve or Pandora, blamed for nothing less than humanity's ills, right? All of man's ills. That's pretty crazy right there. And we are told that story over and over and over again. So this is why these cornerstones are all interconnected, and why gender is really an organizing principle for families, for economics. There's always money for weapons, for wars, for prisons. These are associated with the dominant male, right? But somehow there isn't enough money to care for children, to feed children. This shapes our values. Okay? So it's a completely different way from what we're taught, but it makes sense once you connect the dots. So that's it, and I hand it over to Roger, and I'm dying to find out what you have to say. And all of the cornerstones are interconnected. I mentioned story and I haven't mentioned language, but think about empowering came into our vocabulary. You can't have an empowering leadership as the corporate literature tells us now in the domination system. It's very simple. It's all power over, right? Not power with or power to creative power. And creativity was, by the way, before modernity, devalued. Effeminate men, only effeminate men were, quote, creative, right? Real men were fighters, warriors, this sort of thing. Anyway, Roger.
Thanks, Riane. Before I jump into the media part here, I just want to piggyback on Riane's talking about the devaluation of women, and just keep in mind what one of the things she discovered and put out in The Chalice and the Blade was that this all came about 5,000 years ago. This has been 5,000 years when women were relegated to second place in the birth of the domination culture, because we know just in the thousands of years before that there were partnership societies where women were revered and worked in partnership. So we're at the end of the domination period. It's in its dying last gasps, and so how are we going to get to the other side? a lot of the answer to me has to do with media. So I'm going to share with you maybe a little more than you can take in. I'll go through it pretty rapidly about a major project that I'm involved in that's global in scale. And we think this is the most important thing for actually tilting the trajectory of humanity towards partnership. So I'm going to show a short video, first of all. I'm going to screen share. And I'm hoping the sound comes through. Playing videos on Zoom I've had not the best of luck, but that.
Stories shape society. Media creates our world. Shape the future with us at the Positive Media Lab. Media comes in many shapes and sizes. In any form of media, what matters is the experience that people have and how it changes them. What will you choose? What do you choose? Is it positive media or harmful media? What do you consume? These are choices that you're making. And how does it make you feel? Positive media is compassionate, truth-seeking, peace-promoting, transformative, and foundationally rooted in partnership and love, while negative media is deceptive, full of lies and exploitation, violence and control, with clickbait foundationally rooted in domination and separation. We are media leaders, storytellers, and creators who unite across the world to shape a new story. We use media as a force for care, compassion, and connection. We collaborate, building trust, transparency, and shared purpose. We uplift voices of all cultures, generations, and communities, telling stories that inspire hope, healing, and flourishing, celebrating our planet and nurturing the web of life we all share. And you're invited to help us build the future of positive media together. As a network of networks, join a group that can amplify your voice, expand your reach, and grow together. Join a global network that multiplies your message, lowers your cost, and drives positive impact through shared media tools, group buying power, collaborative data, and member-to-member opportunities. Curious to learn more? Visit us at www.positivemedialab.com or scan this QR code. Together, we can change the global media landscape.
Well,
Okay, we're back.
I'll tell you what I'm missing. I'm missing the deconstruction of media because without shaming or blaming, we have to really show that this isn't just pie in the sky. And like the Odyssey, for example, has so many clues to an earlier time when the, quote, feminine wasn't associated with monsters. You know, still powerful figures, but now Charybdis is the monster. Now the sirens eat men. For goodness sakes, I mean, that's pretty bad stuff, right? And we've been fed that in not only our sacred scriptures, but in our epics. And I'm missing that. I know that you want to show what's positive, and it's beautiful, but I am missing the deconstruction.
Well, Riane, I'm actually trying to pull up a slideshow here that goes into a little more depth as to what we have in mind. So, all right, so this is an introduction to this project called Positive Media Lab, and I'm not sure I'm going to answer Riane's concern or not, but I'm just going to go through this. And then when we're done, we can have some discussion. So media at this point is the most important thing happening in the world. And something like 75% of mainstream media in the US is now owned by the right wing. And there's a completely different narrative that's being advanced. It's about domination. It's really clinging to the domination paradigm. So these are incredibly powerful tools, and some of us have decided we've got to get together and create what we're calling a media ecosystem, and start using this for the good, to teach about domination to partnership and to teach the new narratives. And so I'll just go into a little more detail about the structure we have in mind. So first thing is there's a little sort of ambiguity around the word media. Everyone uses it in kind of two ways. So just to be clear, sometimes it's referring to a content, like a piece of media, a YouTube video or a podcast or something like that. And then there's also, we think of the media as CNN or Fox News or YouTube, and which is the channel, the pathway. So we kind of use them interchangeably, and ultimately we are trying to reach people, and people are being reached now through their screens and through media, and that's an issue of both the channels and the content. But we're pretty focused on content, and for example, Riane's work is content. How do we get that out there in a bigger way? So that is the goal. What we mean by positive media, there's not a strict definition, but this spectrum that we've come up with, and we keep refining it and improving it with feedback. But the idea is that media is very much like food. Food can be good for you or not good for you. And of course, we all need to figure that out and make good choices. So media is perhaps even more important than food, because it's food that's going into your mind and has profound, I think we greatly underestimate how much effect these screens have on our brains and our worldviews and our values. So on the right side then is the whole sphere of what we call positive media, and at the beginning of it is just good journalism, and sort of the minimum requirement is truth seeking, as you see above there. That, at least we're not going to be deceptive. We're not trying to mislead people or exploit people. And so good journalism, of course, is absolutely foundational to democracy. You can't have an informed citizenry with bad information, which of course is what's going on right now. The inspiring stories, then, this is very much the narrative and language, much in the realm of entertainment. But we can have really positive entertainment, and there's lots of good examples of that. And sometimes we forget that all the knowledge of science and the whole educational system of transmitting knowledge is really a media project. Of course, the whole educational system in the U.S. is really challenged, let's say. And then at the far right is really the space where I'm coming from, and what we've sometimes called conscious media or unitive media, but it's really the messages of partnership and compassion and peace and love and all of those kinds of things, which, good journalism or science and education are not going to be getting into that. So this just gives a sense, and we're really trying to sort of put this out in the world, that people need to understand that there is a spectrum, and you get to choose, and choose well. So the problem we're seeking to address is that we have a lot of positive media being created, and we have many, many organizations and people doing phenomenal work, but it's just not competing well with the huge, chaotic media landscape that's out there. So we're basically working in silos. And so the solution is to join together in a media ecosystem that combines resources and gets unified messaging, coordinated messaging, so that we can have a much bigger reach and influence. But what do we mean by a media ecosystem? Well, there's one operating in the world right now that's really, really good, and we're all familiar with it. And notice that it's not just Fox News or AM talk radio. It's all of these somehow working together. I don't know how, but coming up with coordinated messaging, mostly fear-based, mostly about othering and ranking and essentially promoting the white Christian male nationalism agenda. That is the right-wing agenda in America right now. And that is what produced 77 million Trump voters in 2024. I don't think there was anything wrong with Kamala's values or message. The Democrats got beat in the media, plain and simple. And so the power of the media is incredibly important. So we need to do something like that, but we can do much better because we have all kinds of technologies available. There's people involved in this project. There have AI companies and new kinds of platforms. We're smarter. We can have positive emotions going rather than just fear. It's spiritually grounded, and we have the moral high ground because our agenda is the good of the whole on behalf of other people. We want all people to be included and to thrive. So that's what a media ecosystem looks like. Ours, the positive media ecosystem, is what we're creating, and we're just about to launch this, so it's not up and going yet, but it has two fundamental parts: a network and an organization. Really, it might be like a nonprofit or even a business that is in support. So I'll just flesh out a little bit what each of these are. The purple oval is much bigger because this is really where the business happens. So members of the network can be any of these, from individuals to large companies, to Disney studios, organizations, research. There's university media research departments and funders. And to create a space where they can all come together and exchange resources and knowledge and support each other. The other piece that's sort of the portal into this is a public website. And there is something there at that URL, but in the next week or two, we'll have it more built out. But it would be a pathway to join if you you fill out a short form if you want to join the network. And then there will be a login for members. So this space, it's not a public space. You have to be a member. So once you join, then you would log into this. But a little more detail, and I'll just mention that I'll put a PDF of these slides in the chat when I finish, if you want to look in more detail. But this is just a list of some of the things that this collaborative space we would like to support amongst media entities. And the activities will mostly be online, of course, because this is the beauty of the technology. We have Zoom, that we've got people all over the world, mostly North America, Europe, and Australia. But, this is to be a global effort. One of the things I'm most excited about, third down on the list on the right, the coordinated campaigns, is to have particular groups focused on a certain thing. Like I was talking with someone earlier today about educating men into partnership. So a whole messaging campaign around how to be a good man. Think about that in the era of Epstein that we're in. And we would devise campaigns on multiple channels: social media, video, when we have the money, television advertising, really high level, catchy marketing kinds of things around being a good man. Or, there's at least 10 other themes, and like, what is partnership? What does that mean? Or recognizing domination culture. So kind of excited about that. But the support, looking at the large black circle now, is the entity that provides management and support to the network. And it's probably going to be a nonprofit. There will be a board and staff. We already have a core leadership team, 3 of us, and then the staff is hired. But one of the primary functions will be to find funding, and we intend to get very high-level funding for this. And we already know that there's philanthropists at very large scales, levels, that are looking for something new, that are realizing that this media thing is really the most important thing we have to address right now. Just solving climate change actually won't slow this down. So we really have confidence that eventually we're going to have very large funding, and a lot of it will be funneled into the member network to fund media projects, new projects, and existing projects. But there's other just general support and administrative services to keep everything running and facilitate the group activities. And we will have a very large presence of AI, which our member that has a company likes to call it augmented intelligence rather than artificial, and to have that as an offering and be able to use the power of that to amplify everything. So the effect of all this is that we're pumping out positive media in all channels, all levels, all over the world, just saturating humanity with good news, positive things, stories about what people in partnership are like, and we just have to start showing people. So the big picture then is we've got the network, the support services, the website, funding gets pumped into that members network, as well as all the sharing and synergy that happens, sharing of expertise and knowledge. We put out positive media, but also part of the campaign is what's been called media literacy, where we need to teach people about how to evaluate media, for one thing, critical evaluation, and how to make those right choices. And so we're not trying to fight or be against the negative side. We're trying to put out something better that will attract people and people will choose. And then so that positive media really becomes a movement or a thing, a meme, like health food. If you think about that, I can tell you in 1955, nobody ever heard of health food, but it became a thing, and now it's a household phrase. Everyone knows what health food means, and like, yeah, we should eat health food, and yeah, we should consume positive media. So we kind of have two-layer strategy. The first one is for all the existing work that's already being done, to figure out how to amplify it and weave it together and coordinate it across different members. And then secondly, when we have more funding, is to really have new kinds of media, fund films and small media companies and things like that. So I'm going to finish with this slide, which comes from my organization, the Planet Project. And it's sort of one of the ways in our messaging. So we're just, a media, we're small, but, we've got our media channels. And what we're trying to convey is, we call these the 3 pillars of, and a lot of our focus is on the great transition, from domination to partnership, from separation to unity, exploitation to caring. And this would be very much at the core of the messaging that we're interested in, is to have stories and podcasts and all kinds of great media that supports this. Riane, do you want to have first crack at comments?
Well, I love your presentation. I still think that we need to make the point in this that to just focus on domination being the way forward is the way to extinction of our species. that has to be somewhere, because to talk about just the positives, I don't think is enough. I think people
Well,
realize.
Riane, I think positive media can include talking about domination. It's about truth,
Yeah.
really. So
Yeah.
we have to we need to talk about the truth of what happened to the Native Americans, what happened to the slaves that came from Africa. Here, we have the right wing trying to rewrite that history, right? Trying to erase that. So it doesn't mean it all makes you feel good necessarily. We just are going to tell the truth.
Well, it does. You see what the media, it does give us dopamine. I mean, like people who are addicted, say, to video games. Okay, it gives you a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
So it isn't that it doesn't make us feel good. It's a false high, and it's temporary, and it's an escape from reality.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we either move to a more partnership-oriented space and realize our capacities, because we have the capacities for violence or caring. I mean, we just do. And it really depends on what kind of society we construct. And the media are very important. But I don't think that telling people that it's not good for us without explaining why,
Well, that's a
They'll
good
explain
point.
why.
Yeah, for sure.
Lawrence, comments?
Yeah, I have some questions. I agree with Riane. I also, back to Riane's point about deconstructing stories as a critical component of the sort of narrative cornerstone. I mean, I think that act of deconstruction can happen in that media space. That's, I think that's something you can take on. The two questions that I have, one is very simple, and that's how you distinguish in your media space between information and entertainment. Rather, you see both happening in that media space. And then my other question is sort of where Riane was going with this, is that how do you draw audience to that? Like people don't watch alt-right or listen to alt-right media because they inherently want to embrace domination, but there's something about I don't know, the material, as she says, that sort of kind of sucks you in a little bit. You want a conspiracy theory or something. You want to hear that, you want the drama, right? So what draws the audience to this space?
Well, it has to be good, and we want to bring world-class people in that know how to design. I mean, there can be very compelling stories that model these things, but we're not showing this. That's the problem now. Sometimes you just need to tell people or just show them. And so our belief is that if we put it out there, especially in a unified way, it can be attractive. I mean, this is an attraction project. We're not fighting the other side. There's no sides. We want to get out of that whole paradigm of struggle and fighting, defeating, we're going to win, all that. No, we want to produce something healthy and put it out at large scale. And we think that it can be attractive. And the people will see, they feel a whole lot better from an hour spent in some kind of positive media than all the dopamine, rise and fall. So,
yeah, that's a challenge. I mean, so much. I mean, you kind of suggested it in your presentation. I mean, so much of that information space is politicized. There's a lot of messages that aren't inherently political unless you make them political, or you label them as political. But that's not something you're avoiding, that, right?
I would say this is not political. This is underlying all of these surface systems, like the political system, the economic system. I mean, as Riane says, the new economic system has to be based on caring, And that's a value that you have to teach and portray. And media and screens, that is how we're reaching people now. That's the reality. I don't like it. And I don't even like to consume that much media myself, but that is the way, and we have to get mobilized at a very large scale. And there's people waking up to this. This is a media crisis that we're in right now. It's
I
bigger.
guess it's the waking up that I don't see that much of in what you presented. And I think that take AI. I mean, it's gonna really it's already taking up programming jobs. My grandson is losing his job as a scribe because AI can do it better in AR. Okay. I mean, in hospitals, they have robots now. So the question is, what's left for humans? It's our capacity to really care, isn't it?
And be creative.
And
Creativity.
be creative. Those are the two capacities, power with and power to.
But to
But
be
I'd love to
creative,
hear from some of the
Yeah, there are
people.
questions. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
raise a hand, please, and
The audience,
love to hear.
as to what your thoughts are. Because this is so important. We have to do something. And what Roger is proposing is starting with the story and language, you know, the media, which is our main avenue, really, these days.
It's the avenue.
Would love
We
to
have
hear
Aaron here with her hand.
Jackson or from Seth, from Annie, from Sarah, from
Aaron has her hand up.
Aaron wants to talk. Good for you.
Hi, Riane. Hi,
Hi,
Roger. Hi, Lawrence. Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here with all of you. Riane, I have read a couple of your books, and I am just so taken with your view of the world. I'm especially moved by your writing about ancient societies and how they were more partnership oriented. And I feel like this is this huge secret that's been kept from us because when I talk with people in my everyday life, I really feel like we were cheated out of an education because people don't believe that there was really anything notable that happened prior to, say, the ancient Greeks. And my question for you, Riane, is do you have any tips for conveying this information in everyday conversations with everyday people? Where do we begin with these conversations? When I start going on about ancient societies and egalitarianism, people don't even believe me because the history books, start with the Greeks, and it's really hard to help people to think differently about our human heritage. So I wanted to know how do you have tips on just having these conversations with everyday folks who have never been on a Zoom call like this?
Well, Lawrence is putting together a book for teaching about the various periods of history. And I think because I know what you mean, okay, Aaron, you can't just jump in and say, look at these ancient societies, because people say, well, what? But look at societies. Let's start with right now. Ireland has moved towards partnership. Towards what? Partnership, because the alternative to, depending on who you're talking to, the alternative to patriarchy is not matriarchy, it's partnership. I mean, right there. Do you see what I'm saying? And then go into the Nordic nations. They have moved more towards partnership, and then perhaps go into the modern movements that have all challenged the same thing, domination. You know, the women's movement, the challenge to the so-called divinely ordained right of kings to rule, so supposedly divinely ordained right of men to rule over women and children, of the so-called divinely ordained right of a quote superior race to rule over an inferior race, all the way to the environmental movement challenging our dominion over nature. And then say, but it hasn't been this way forever. In fact, for most of our history, and for most of us, this is coming in bits and pieces. But a book that foreshadows, because people are beginning to write about Çatalhöyük, but they don't have the frame of partnership, domination, social scale. So they say, well, society wasn't always the way we think it was, right? No, society didn't always orient primarily to domination rather than partnership. That's the difference, and that's the thing to get at. I don't know if that's helpful, but somehow you've got to get people interested in how this really affects us right now. Does that make sense, Erin?
Yes, thank you, Riane. I have been starting way too far back. I need to start with right now and what people are reading and seeing in their.
But that's just my opinion, that you get to because they say, well, ancient, so what? How is this relevant? It's very relevant, as it happens to be, because what this analysis, the study of relational dynamics, shows is what kind of relationships a particular society supports or inhibits is really the crux, isn't it? And who isn't interested in relationships, right? So, but you don't give up. Just keep doing what you're doing and talk about this, because people really are dying for an alternative. And partnership is the alternative, not matriarchy. There never was. And frankly, I'm not interested. I mean, I know that critiques of my work always lump me in with, oh, I'm talking about matriarchy. And I go to huge pains to say, no. There never was a matriarchy, but, to heck with it. Let them just do whatever they do. Yeah. But the time is now.
Erin, I think that was a great question. And, I find it very hard also in conversation to talk about this incredible change that happened and to tell the story. I mean, this is one of the greatest stories. And here's where I come back to media. How do you reach people and tell these stories? Through the media. I mean, I'd love to see, Riane's the story of the chalice and the blade and what happened and how it's been. So that's the only way I know. I don't think the schools are going to revise their history curriculum.
Well, they are, but not in the way that you want.
That's the way. But you can sneak in. I mean, we're now working as a group, I hope, with not only updating my book on education, Tomorrow's Children, but also really showing first I never thought of it that way, and I learn all the time. What teachers need to know is one thing, and what teachers and how teachers are to teach it is quite another, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That varies depending on the level of education, of children, etc. So, but I'd love to hear from you. I feel we're taking up the space, the time. And I'm so glad, Aaron, that you spoke up. Thank you. How about hearing from some of the guys here?
Raise your hand and get you queued up.
I just love to, and don't worry about being critical. I mean, we learn that way.
I sense that River Cook has a question. I feel a vibe coming off you, River. That did you have? Am I wrong about that or?
I did have a question. I wasn't sure
Okay.
how to raise my hand on the thing.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Right.
I'm not exactly sure how to word it, but just in trying to push this message out of like more partnership and positive media on more of a wide scale. Do you have any theories of how to like get this message across to people that might be like stubborn in their ways? And like I've talked to a few of my friends about this system and or about like more partnership type systems, and they just seem very stubborn in their ways and like, no, that's ridiculous, and they want to consume the media they've always consumed, the right-wing media, the whatever the case may be, whether that be because they don't want to be wrong or like proven wrong, or if that's just how they were raised or whatever the case may be. But what ideas do you have of pushing this narrative to people that might be very set in their ways?
Well, this is the real question. We're all set in our ways. I mean, and we're all traumatized to some extent. From my theoretical perspective, the people who follow the so-called Christian, which is not really Christian, I mean, certainly doesn't follow the teachings of Jesus by any remote way at all. They are very traumatized because starting in their families. So I am directing my talk to people that I think are less traumatized, which is people who subscribe to some progressive ideology, but in bits and pieces. And I'm trying to have people connect the dots, because believe me, the people pushing us back have a very coherent, integrated domination frame. Starts with childhood, don't tell me what you're gonna, I'm gonna burn these books, I'm gonna, etc. It starts in family. It has to be a male-headed family. Women have to be subordinate. That goes to gender. There's nobody in between. They're rigid gender stereotypes. I mean, think about it, whether it's Khomeini's Iran or the Taliban, Eastern religious societies, or whether it is Nazi Germany, a rightist contemporary secular society, or Stalin's former Soviet Union, the USSR. They all oriented to the domination system, isn't they? And it goes, the economics does not reward caring. It penalizes caring. And it's relegated to the feminine and to women. And look at the stories, my God, I mean, that we've inherited. And I feel, again, I'm such a supporter of what Roger is doing. I don't want to sound, in any way, but I think that it needs to be a little bit less positive. And it also needs to recognize the fact that we are at a place where we are interconnected not only through technologies of transportation and communication globally, but we're interconnected through technologies of destruction, nuclear weapons. And I worry about this war because this Ayatollah, if he really, really, really believes that he's going to get 12 virgins, in the hereafter, why not? Why not let loose, with every single nuclear power, etc., etc., etc. But so the issue for us is finding, and this is what all these movements are about, but in bits and pieces rather than being unified. And I so would like to have a virtual summit on the real wealth of nations, especially in our age of AI. What kind of economic system can we have that rewards rather than penalizes caring and caregiving? Because that's what people want, isn't it? That caring connection. And I see you shaking your head, yes. And it's not easy. And we're kind of flying the airplane as we're building it,
Yeah, I'd like to venture a comment about River's question about reaching other people in conversation. And this is my personal view, but trying to persuade people of things that are, they're already entrenched in their ways. I don't want to spend a lot of my life and my energy doing that. On the other hand, you just can't spend all your time preaching to the choir. The space I work in is there's a lot of preaching to the choir. We all agree and we all love each other. So there's some sweet spot in between of people that are reachable. We want to push as far out into that. And frankly, the media project has to be focused on young people to begin with. And the older people are going to be leaving this earth soon enough. And it's the young people are really the hope in their world. So I think I just sympathize, River, with what you said about reaching people, but don't waste too much of your time trying to reach people that are unreachable. And find the ones you resonate with, and then it's a hard dance. I just want to acknowledge it's a difficult question. So thanks for that.
Speaking of young people, there's Seth. Hello. I was hoping that you'd join in the conversation.
Yeah, I was gonna ask a question about young people, and you brought it up, so I thought it was perfect time. But I mean, I've always thought, and it's kind of a big issue in my generation. It's becoming one, at least, with all the short form content, social media, to not only like this huge amount of time spent consuming media that's, I guess it would be considered like the harmful media you were talking about, because it's all just about fear mongering, or it's just no content at all, and it kind of just is wasting people's time and processing power. So I bet and I hope that like in this positive media plan you have, there's some kind of plan on reaching the younger generation, because I know like I search out like media and content that educates me and on politics or whatever. And there's not a lot of it, and it's very not pushed on these algorithms and stuff. They want to show you things that'll keep you scrolling, keep you liking. So what are like potential plans or strategies for reaching the younger generation, and one, getting them to even want to hear about what we have to say about partnership and changing the system we're in?
Well, we want to recruit young people into this network and help them design, the messaging and the campaigns. So, I mean, I think that's the short answer. Very high priority. I mean, probably my highest priority. a lot of the people involved now are older just because we have more time and things like that. Although a lot of us are, not me, but are working and need paying mortgages and things like that. But young people are very busy, but yeah, we absolutely have to engage them in how to do that. They know better how to do that, how to reach, how to run the social media. In addition to one of the harms of this, the harmful media, I think, is just the psychological effects of all this short form media blasting, away at your brain, pulling and tugging and telling you things that aren't true and playing on your insecurities. I think aside from the messaging content, it's just very damaging psychologically. I mean, I think people, their personal growth, their freedom is really threatened by this. So that alone, so one of the players in our network, there's several really amazing like apps that are out there and some being developed. They're sort of in the vein of meditation apps, but there's one guy that we're working with. It's an alarm clock app that wakes you up with this incredible music that's just very, very soothing. And then you can program different messaging. You can even create your own, so that the beginning of every day, you're sent off with this. There's certain frequencies they found that raise consciousness basically, and so there's lots of potential. We haven't really tried so far. It's just been a massive free for all. This whole media thing. It's to make money or to persuade people to for politics. That's all there is. So we haven't even really tried to do something good with media, except there's educational media and there's some things, but there's no big money in it. So that's why we need to have big money supporting this, and I think we will have that. So, I don't know, Seth, if I addressed your question.
No, that makes sense. And that's kind of what I would hope you say, is like that it is oriented towards the younger generation, because that is kind of very important.
And we're just starting to recruit. So if you or anyone's interested, get in touch with me and find out how we can get you involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth, for your participation. And I want to thank Rivert also. I mean, I hate the term toxic masculinity because it's so accusative. I would rather talk about what humans need, and that care is a human capacity, not just a women's or men's capacity, for goodness sakes. And you know how many men are caregivers.
Mhm.
I mean, and they're not getting rewarded for it.
I was thinking that if River, like, I agree that with Roger that I wouldn't spend too much time trying to convince someone that absolutely has decided they don't want to be convinced. That's not the right time for them. I would also not demonize them for not listening right now. But I bet that if you ask them about things that they care about, really, I think that you would find that they agree with you more than they realize that they agree with you. I mean, do they care about the well-being of children, for example? Of course. Like that would be, yeah.
And the question, however, is how do we work for the well-being of children? And then you get this divergence, because in domination systems, caring is always confluent with control, always. And we've all been exposed to that. I mean, and it's not our parents' fault. I mean, they were just passing on whatever it is that they were taught, is good parenting. And it turns out that it may not be. So
Yeah.
is there somebody else?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Roger.
There's a hand. All right, Chloe.
I do have a question for you, Mr. Briggs, about how you intend to purvey this media content to the younger generations, because like Seth mentions, most of the content in the media that's perceived by these younger generations is in terms of short form, like dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit, dopamine hit. Like just make me feel good, make me feel good, make me not have to think. But also, and so we know that that's psychologically damaging and that that's not good for us. But also, when we're trying to reach the younger generations, and we know that that's a lot of what they prefer to consume, do you have any ideas or thoughts about how you're going to navigate that dilemma?
Well, it is a dilemma, but I think you have to go where people are at. So we have if TikTok is still what people are consuming, or Instagram, then we have to do that. And we just have to do it with integrity and try to gradually expose people to more and more content that's maybe longer form. And but yeah, we in my organization a few years ago we call that going. We just have to go to the brothel. We're going to have to go to where people are and but give them something better. We can still give them better content. So it's a very good point. But we certainly want to transition away from that's all people consume. There's a lot of good YouTube stuff that's more like, I think the 2 minute to 5 minute video is actually a pretty kind of like the Instagram reel format, maybe a little longer. A lot of promise there, I think. Now, YouTube itself is pretty predatory. As you know, its algorithms queue up more of the same of whatever you chose, and it's an advertising platform. The revenue is all advertising.
That's why we have to change the economic system, which everybody understands. But, it isn't functioning. It isn't rewarding what we all need, right? Yeah. I think it's a multifaceted thing, Chloe. And I see that Sarah would like to say something too.
Sarah put her real hand up.
A real hand up?
Real hand,
Yeah, go for it. What?
That works.
Well, I have a 6-year-old granddaughter that I live with. And I know that one of her favorite things is to watch television. And of course, she's very limited on what she can watch and how long she can watch. But the shows that really draw her in are kind of stories with cartoon kind of characters, or maybe even real people, that are sequential. And so, yes, I know we need to hit the schools, but I think we also need to start where Sesame Street started for my children many, many, many years ago. And maybe that's a niche that creativity can really be used to start at that age, at the 3 and 4-year-olds, or even the 2 and 3-year-olds, of this concept of partnership and how to look at things a little bit differently. That's my thought. I think we need to start even younger than the college age or the teenagers.
And Sarah, I'm so glad you said that, because if you ask a young child, what's your worst relationship and what's your best relationship, they'll tell you. And they're describing either partnership or domination. Not being seen, not being heard, that's your worst relationship. And if you treat it with respect, mutual respect, that's
Excuse me.
and so I'm with you, but I do want to say that everybody, you just think of what your network is, okay? And go for it. And don't worry, if you're successful at first, or if you feel successful, just keep it up. And remember that how socialism got on the map, and people read and discussed. And that's something that social media is weaning the younger generation from. And don't be misled, because there's nothing like really getting a book and really getting into it. So one thing that you can do is suggest book clubs for your friends, and use some of my books in that, starting with The Chalice and the Blade, which was the first book, and it does tell a story that's being verified. I mean, there was just a Chinese an announcement in I think it was in some really unlikely publication, finding that a matrilineal society that really seems to have been a partnership society in prehistoric China. So, I mean, the information, but it's coming at us in so many bits and pieces, and we lack the frame. And it's up to you whether we'll have it. And I really want to thank both Lawrence and Roger so much, because they understand that getting this frame out is such a comfort to people. It's so empowering.
Yeah, and I think what gets people discouraged is seeing the domination culture, just roaring back today in the U.S. particularly. And they don't have that perspective. I call it an evolutionary perspective, that we're in transition. We're in an evolutionary transition. We are not a done deal. The human species is not a finished product. And the old way, because we're destroying our life support system with the domination culture, will do us in. I mean, so we have to make this change. But there is a promised land on the other side, and it's called partnership, and it's called unity and peace on earth, and we can create it.
Yes, and it's not ideal, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some violence and some injustice, but so much less. And that's really what to keep in mind, that we're not, I had to coin a new word, pragmatopia, rather than utopia, a possible place rather than no place.
There's a lot of literature now on the realistic utopia, or realist utopia. That's the Rucker Bregman crowd.
Yeah, well, I'll try to dig up my article on pragmatopia.
That's
and
interesting.
see if I can, but don't count on it.
Okay. Well, Lawrence, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
No, I'll leave it to you to wrap up.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to mention our plan for next time is a little different. It's going to get into, let's call it partnership in action. So the reading that will be sent out will be a blog that I wrote. Sorry, it's not Riane, but it's about partnership. And it's a story that still amazes me, that is from my teaching career in the high school, about how I created a partnership culture and what the incredible things that came out of that. So that's the reading. Hopefully it'll be a fun read. might remind you of high school days a little bit. And then next time, what we'd like to ask is for people to share their own partnership stories from their life, real things, either just brief incidents or the more elaborate story like the one that I've told. So I think that should be fun, but we'll ask people to, come with your stories and let's really see how it actually plays out and how it works and why it really is so powerful. And I kid you not, in most of my adult life, I've worked in partnership capacities, and whenever it's really working, the results are stunningly better than when someone's in control and trying to be the center of power and all these things. You can order people around, but it's nothing like what happens when you bring them up in partnership. So be thinking about that. And otherwise, there is a Google Drive space. There's a link to it. I'll send it out again. If you're not on our email list, contact me. I hope you have my email address, and we'll get you on that list. That's how we're communicating right now. So any final thoughts from anyone or Lawrence, Riane?
Well, I'm so glad you're doing these meetings, and I really have enjoyed Seth, and I've enjoyed River and all the women that have spoken. Not all have spoken, but at least some of you, and I would love to see who else is there. But you've chosen, and I respect that, to be incognito. So that's fine too. But I look forward to next time, and I'm really enjoying being with you. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Riane.
Riane. And thank
Wouldn't
you
be the
to
same
everyone for
without
good
you.
questions. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I am so glad that some of you are in your class, Lawrence.
There's a lot of students from my class here tonight, and they were all asking really, really, really good questions.
Yes.
I'm impressed, to say the least.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Bye, Riane.
All right.
You are loved, and see you next time.
Okay, everyone. See you next time.